Dear friends and viewers, welcome to Kns Biochemistry. In this video session, we are going to discuss about one of the important biomolecules of the living system. If you say biomolecules, they are nothing but the chemical components essential for the metabolism to take place in living cells. So we have four major categories of biomolecules. They are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. So here we are going to see about proteins, one of the important major biomolecules of all forms of living system on this earth.
Proteins and their structure.
So let me introduce myself first. I am Dr.K.Narayanasamy, Associate Professor of Biochemistry, Nehru Arts and Science College, Coimbatore. So once again I welcome you all to this session. This is a very kind welcome from Kns Biochemistry. So let us start the session now. So in this session we are going to see about what is a protein, what is the classification of protein, what are all the main functions of the protein, and the examples for each type of protein, then the role of this versatile macrobiomolecule in the living system. So when you see the outcome of this video session, after just watching this video session, anyone can able to understand what is a biomolecule, what is a protein, and how many types of proteins are there, what are all the major role or functions of these proteins.
It is often said that we should include protein-rich food in our diet. Proteins are present in many food items such as eggs, fish, and milk. Proteins are not just present in foods, they are also an integral part of our body. They are present in our hair, muscles, and even in hemoglobin.
So what is this protein then? Proteins are similar to any other chemical molecule which is visible on your earth, but these chemicals are different from those in terms of biological nature. That is, proteins are chemical biomolecules. That is, the molecules which are chemical in nature, but it is present inside the living system. They are called as biomolecule. So what is a molecule? Molecule is any chemical compound which is made up of atoms which is distributed on the earth, not only on the earth, anywhere in the universe. What is a biomolecule then? Biomolecule also like a chemical molecule made up of atoms, but it is present in the living system. So they are called as biomolecules because they are present in the biological system. So any molecule which is present in the system, biological system, are called as biomolecules. Proteins are one such kind of biomolecules. These biomolecules, that is protein biomolecules, they are chemically made up of amino acids. These amino acids are again the chemical components, and these simplest chemical components, they are going to form the proteins. So proteins are made up of amino acids and they are found in all forms of living organisms, starting from small virus to the biggest animal which was there on the earth, that is the dinosaur, or the elephant, what we are going to see, the biggest animal. So whatever may be the form of life, whether it is single cell or it is small virus or the biggest one like some bigger animals, all forms of living organisms, they are having proteins.
Proteins are formed when a large number of amino acids bond together through peptide bond.
So why these proteins are needed to the living system? What is their role in the system, the living system? Proteins are the building blocks of life. So if you want to continue with your life, if you want to live as an individual living organism, if you want to live, you need proteins. Proteins are going to construct some cellular components. They are the building blocks of your cells, and these cells are going to make you to live. So we can call them as building blocks of life. Of course, without these proteins we cannot build some cellular components. So that is why proteins are essential macromolecules found in all living organisms. These proteins, they have main role in cellular and other important bodily functions inside your system. They have significant functions in metabolic pathways also. The metabolic pathways are biochemical pathways, biochemical reactions which is happening inside your cells. So they play very important role or very crucial roles in various biological processes and various biological reactions. So let us come to the classification of these proteins. So proteins can be classified into three major groups: group 1, group 2 and group 3. First one, they are called as simple proteins. That is the proteins which they are having very simple amino acid structures, because proteins are made up of amino acids. They have simple amino acid structures, and you see that these proteins are called as simple proteins. For example, fibrous protein, which is having a thread-like structure made up of amino acids. Our hair, which is a fibrous protein. Globular protein, which is having spherical shape like our earth. And membrane proteins, the protein which is present in the cell membrane of any cell. So one example is collagen. It is a fibrous protein which is there in our joints of the tissues.
Depending upon the molecular shape of proteins, they can be classified as fibrous proteins and globular proteins. Let us study about them one by one. Fibrous proteins are formed when polypeptide chains run parallel to each other and are linked together to form fibers. The molecules of these chains at many points are held together by hydrogen and disulfide bonds. These proteins are insoluble in water. Some common examples of fibrous proteins are collagen and keratin. On the other hand, globular proteins are formed due to the folding around of polypeptide chains. This gives a spherical shape to the globular proteins. These proteins are soluble in water. Some examples of globular proteins are insulin and albumin. As you can see, the structure of proteins is quite complex.
Second category or group of proteins are called conjugated proteins. These are the proteins, they are having protein part and non-protein part. So protein part is made up of amino acids. This protein part is combined with some non-protein part that is called metals. So proteins joined with some metals, they are called conjugated proteins. Example, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is having heme and globin. Globin is the protein part and heme is the ion containing pyrrole ring compound. It's a metal containing compound. So the metal containing this non-protein part combines with the protein part, that is globin, and it forms a conjugated protein called hemoglobin. The third one is derived proteins. These are all the proteins which is derived from the other two types, the simple and conjugated. So they are derivatives of proteins. For example, proteases, small proteins. After destroying the other proteins, you will get small protein peptides, small fragments, they are called proteases. Peptones, peptides. When you break the amino acid sequence, you will get peptones and peptides. So they are all derived from the major proteins. So they are called derived proteins. So we can classify the proteins into simple proteins, conjugated proteins and derived proteins. And the levels of protein structure. See that protein is having very basic structures, and it is having different levels of structural organization or structural arrangement. So we can see the levels of protein structure here. So that the proteins are having three levels of structural organization. So let us see one by one. First one is primary structure. This is very simplest structure, which is having amino acid sequences, because proteins are already, I told you, building blocks of the life, and it is made up of amino acid sequences. So when you have only very simple sequence, that is amino acid thread or sequence, this is called a primary structure. Anything which is having linear sequence of amino acids in a protein, it is called primary structure of the protein. So this primary structure determined by the genetic code, that is genetic code which comes from the DNA, which is one very important the nucleic acid, which is the blueprint of any form of life. So peptide bonds which is present in between the two amino acids in this sequence, primary structure, they are actually going to link amino acids together, and it forms the primary structure. So these amino acid sequences, they are going to form the primary structure of any protein. You see that will give you very simplest structure. Example, insulin, which is having a primary amino acid sequence structure.
We can study the structure of proteins in 4 different levels, that is primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary structure of proteins. As we already know, a protein is made of a large number of amino acids. Although there are only 20 amino acids, but these amino acids link together in different sequences, giving rise to different polypeptide chains. The sequence of amino acids in a polypeptide chain of a protein is called its primary structure. If the sequence of these amino acids is changed, a new protein gets formed.
Then come to secondary structure. This is the second level of organization, which is something slightly complicated from simple, that is primary structure. So in the secondary structure of the protein, you can see that regular patterns formed, some repetitions are formed, regular patterns are repeated. They are formed by hydrogen bonding, chemical bond between the two amino acids, between the two groups. So it is formed by hydrogen bonding between nearby amino acids, even sometimes between the two functional groups of the two adjacent amino acids. So this common secondary structure which is present in proteins is seen in everywhere. See that this is a very common one. So this common secondary structure include alpha helices and beta pleated sheets, and alpha helices and beta pleated sheets are best example for secondary structure of the, because they will be having some turns, right turns or left turns, looks like a spring. Example, our nail protein. Our nail protein is having zigzag arrangement, Z-like arrangement, loops are formed, it is repeated. So it is an example of secondary structure of any protein.
Now, secondary structure of proteins refers to the manner or shape in which the polypeptide chains are arranged. The different arrangement of polypeptide chains exist due to the hydrogen bonding between the oxygen of carbonyl of one amino acid to the hydrogen of the amide group of another amino acid. The secondary structure shown right now is called alpha helix structure. As you can see in this structure, the hydrogen bonding is intermolecular that occurs between the amino acids of adjacent turns. This results in the twisting up of the structure into a right-handed spiral structure. Another type of secondary structure is formed when the polypeptide chains are stretched to the maximum extension and are then so folded that different strands lie alongside each other. This type of structure is called beta-pleated structure. The different strands are held together by intermolecular hydrogen bonding between the amino acids of two different strands. This structure looks similar to the pleated folds of drapery. Therefore, it is known as beta-pleated sheet structure. So, alpha helix structure and beta-pleated sheet structure represents two different types of secondary structures of proteins.
And the third level of protein structure is tertiary structure of the protein. Here you see that tertiary structure actually gives a three-dimensional structural view of any protein in our nature. So the overall three-dimensional arrangement of a protein with amino acid sequences is called tertiary structure of the protein. So it is influenced by interactions between distant amino acids. Amino acid 1 may interact with amino acid 10 in the polypeptide or 100 in the polypeptide. So that is a kind of interaction which forms the tertiary structure. And sometimes hydrophobic interactions, hydrogen bonds and disulfide bridges, they are going to contribute to tertiary structure. So here tertiary structure will give you three-dimensional conformation, three-dimensional view conformation of the protein. For example, myoglobin. See that in the picture you can see that it is chicken protein, muscle protein, which is having myoglobin. So this is a three-dimensional structure, the tertiary structure of protein, which is seen in the muscle of the chicken here.
The further folding of the secondary structure of proteins gives rise to the tertiary structure of proteins. Therefore, the tertiary structure represents the overall folding and coiling of the peptide chains. It is the tertiary structure of a protein that gives a geometric shape to the protein that can be of fibrous or globular shape.
Then apart from these three levels, we have one more level, additional level, that is advanced level. That is actually, you see that some advancement of tertiary structure, that it is called quaternary structure. Here tertiary three-dimensional subunits, they join together and it will form a coordinated structure. It's called quaternary structure. It is only applicable to proteins with multiple subunits. Sometimes one single protein cannot function as a protein or function as an enzyme. It needs 4 subunits of the same type. For all the 4 subunits, they join together and it will make a single entity, moiety. This is called quaternary structure of the protein. So this quaternary structure describes how these subunits, they come together to form a functional protein complex. So this multi-subunit arrangement that is seen in several enzymes in our body, they are actually, you see that quaternary structure of the protein. Some enzymes are having quaternary structure. Example, hemoglobin, which is present in our RBC, red blood corpuscles, which is having 4 globin units combined with 4 heme moiety, and all the 4 subunits, that is hemoglobin units, joins together, it forms a quaternary structure. 4 subunits quaternary.
Many proteins consist of a single polypeptide chain. There are some proteins which consist of 2 or more polypeptide chains. These polypeptide chains are referred to as the subunits. The quaternary structure is the special arrangement of these subunits with respect to each other in the protein structure. These subunits in a quaternary structure may be similar or different. So we have seen that proteins are specific in their structure.
Then we are going to see about the important essential functions of the proteins. Why we need proteins? Proteins, you see that they are needed for several purposes in our cell. One is it is needed for enzymatic activity, because all the enzymes which are present in our body is responsible for our metabolic reaction, metabolic functions. So where without these enzymes, my biochemical reaction cannot function. So for that, enzymes are needed. This is enzymatic activity of the protein. Structural support. You see that our structural body structure is you see that designed by protein. So structural purpose also proteins are needed. Transport and storage purpose also proteins are needed. Some proteins are transported by, you see that other components in the blood. Then example for enzyme amylase, it is an enzyme. Keratin, that is our hair, this is a structural protein. For transport, for example, ceruloplasmin, it is a transport protein which transports copper in our blood. So here you see that proteins are having that kind of very essential proteins functions. So enzymes, they are going to act as proteins, and these enzymes are having enzymatic activity. So what is the function of these enzymes? Enzymes are having specific mechanisms of action. They have specificity and they have regulation in the metabolic pathway. For example, lactase, it is an enzyme which breaks down lactose, which is the milk sugar which is present in our milk. Then transport function of the protein, see that we have several types of transport proteins available, as I told you, ceruloplasmin. Then these transport proteins functions in nutrient transport, and ion transport is also done in the cell membrane. For example, hemoglobin, which is a transport protein which transports oxygen, molecular oxygen in our blood, because it is very important for see that oxidation process in the cells. So oxygen is needed. That oxygen is transported from the lungs to various cells by this hemoglobin. Then nutritional proteins. So these proteins, they've got a very importance in diet, because you see that chicken pieces here, it's having importance. So complete and incomplete proteins, you see that one way or other way present in the nutrition, or is you see that going to give the very good protein source for our metabolism, for our other purposes. So plant versus animal protein sources are there. You see that non-vegetarians, they will take animal proteins like this chicken, and vegetarians, they need not worry about that. They have plant originated proteins, plant sources. From that also you can get some grains, you see that some kind of cereals, all are having proteins. So protein can be either taken from plant source or from animal source.
Other than this, proteins are specific in their biological activity too. The natural state in which a protein occurs is its native state, and a protein in its native state is called a native protein. A native protein is highly stable. However, if a native protein is subjected to physical or chemical changes such as temperature change or change in pH, the hydrogen bond gets disturbed, causing the shape of the protein to change. The protein unfolds and loses its biological activity.
That, as I told you, that proteins, enzymes are one such a some kind of proteins. What is the importance, functions of these enzymes? They catalyzes the metabolic reaction or any chemical reaction, that speed of chemical reactions. Examples, one example is DNA polymerase, lipase, amylase. These are all the enzymes. Structural proteins, they provide support and shape to the cells and tissues. Collagen, for example, which is present in our skin, tendons and bones. Keratin, our hair, and nail protein. Transport protein, they facilitate the movement of molecules across the cell membranes. Example, hemoglobin, which transport oxygen, and other ion channels present in our cell membrane, they will transfer sodium, potassium and other ions. Then hormones, some of the hormones are proteins. So regulatory proteins that control physiological processes, for example, insulin is a very important hormone, which is made up of protein. Thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, and growth hormones. Defense proteins are also there. Our immune system is having antibodies. Antibodies are actually proteins. So the part of the immune system will produce antibodies. These antibodies are also proteins. They are involved in defense mechanisms. Example, antibodies and complement.
Denaturation of proteins. Interestingly, the primary structure of a protein remains unaltered even during denaturation. It means that the sequence of amino acids remains unchanged. When we cook an egg, the egg white gets coagulated. This is because of the denaturation of proteins present in the egg white. Let's recap. Proteins are formed when a large number of amino acids bond together through peptide bonds. Depending upon the molecular shape of proteins, they can be classified as fibrous proteins and globular proteins. The structure of proteins can be studied in 4 different levels, that are primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary structure of proteins. If a native protein is subjected to physical or chemical changes, it unfolds and loses its biological activity. This is called the denaturation of protein.
So friends, now we have seen about what is a protein, what is a biomolecule, and the classification, structural level, functions of the proteins. Very simple, basic topic. So now this is the time to question and answer. Just you can simply answer. I'll give you very simple questions. You can try to answer. So one question is this one: what is the basic building block of a protein? Options are nucleotide, amino acid, fatty acid, monosaccharide. Friends, already you have listened to my session. Simply you can give the answer. I hope you have identified the answer. You tell me the answer. Yes, you are correct. It's amino acid. Next one, which level of protein structure is determined by the sequence of amino acids? Options are primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. Just go through the question again and try to answer, friends. Yeah, tell me the answer. Yes, you are correct. Primary structure. The next one is, which structure of protein is characterized by the alpha helix and beta pleated sheet? Options are primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. Yes, of course you are correct. The answer is secondary structure. Next one is, enzymes are a type of protein that function as A. transporters, B. hormones, C. catalysts, D. antibodies. Yes, give the answer, friend. Yes, you are correct. Enzymes are catalysts. Friends, you have nicely given answer for all the questions. So hope I have made you to understand about the basic protein molecule. So with that hope, friends, I'm going to end this session. So thank you very much for your patient listening. And once again, if I get another opportunity, I will meet you all with another topic in another video session. So thank you all. Jai Hind.